All right, good morning. People are rolling in right now, so I'm just going to wait a few minutes before I get going. I won't wait too long though, but I want to thank everybody who's here for joining me, and I hope that this is informative for everybody. So for the people who are still rolling in, I'm just waiting to see if more people join, and I will start the recording. Or actually, I've started the recording. I'll start the presentation, I should say. I think for most people, final exams start on December 8th and then go for a week or so after that. So hopefully what I have here will help you really organize, prioritize, and be really efficient with the time that you do have available, since we are getting sort of close. So I am just going to get going. So I'm Dr. Tori Hidalgo. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry at the University of Arizona. I became very interested in learning and learning practices. I am a dyslexic student who really struggled and became focused on how I could be the most productive with my learning, which is where sort of my interest in learning science came from, and my desire to go into education. I have since recognized through working with students for the last 15 years that, you know, we're always sort of told what to learn and not how to learn, and there can be a big jump between the high school and college experience that can be difficult when no one's sort of giving you any heads up on how you should be able to prepare for the extra expectations of college. So I've really dedicated a lot of my time and my heart to trying to help students learn to learn the best way that they possibly can. And this is a big science that has been studied for decades, but just within the last 5 or 10 years has really sort of taken off in terms of the scientific backing behind cognitive psychology and learning and how our brain really works. So what I'm really going to focus on here, and you can watch my other webinar where I talk a little bit more about learning practices and things that you can start integrating in right away that should hopefully help your grades. But this is just really meant to be an overview on how you can prepare for your finals. And I don't want to take too much of your time because you have finals to prepare for. So I'm just going to get started. So there are really 2 stages to final preparation. The first stage is the planning. So you want to create a schedule, you want to create a study plan, you want to organize and prioritize things. And then there's just the doing. So once everything is planned, make sure that you do it. And usually my biggest piece of advice in this, and I like to call the doing stage sort of the robotic stage, is don't think too much about it. Just get everything done that you need to. And I'm going to end this presentation with a few sort of motivational things that you can utilize because inevitably you're going to feel a little burnt out or a little overwhelmed as you go through your final exam studying. So I just wanted to give a few tips that you could maybe integrate in. Not all of them will help you, but hopefully some of them are things that will. So just starting off with the planning portion of things. And I very much recommend that you take this portion of things seriously. The better planned you are and the more organized and prioritized you are with your planning, the easier it is to ensure that you're not just purposeful with your time, but you're really able to be productive with your days and hopefully have some time for yourself, because that's really important moving forward through this entire process as well. So the first thing that I recommend that you do is really determine if you have any homework assignments, projects, presentations left to prepare, and make sure that you get those things done. It can be really easy to kind of get overwhelmed in the final exam studying portion of things and forget some of the other assignments that you have left before that starts. So just make a list of those. And we're going to make sure that those are plugged into your schedule, which I'll talk about in the next slide. The second thing that you want to do is determine the classes that you have a final exam in. And for each of your finals, write down whether or not they're cumulative or will only study, or excuse me, cover new material. And you also want to make sure that you have an idea of how cumulative they are. So for example, some classes are 20% old material, 80% new stuff. Some classes are just essentially broken down and evenly distributed amongst the material covered in your midterm exams. But knowing exactly what portion of the exam will be cumulative or not cumulative will help you in your prioritization of your studying and creating your study schedule. You want to make sure that you also understand what types of problems are going to be on your final. Are they multiple choice? Do you have essays? Are they free response questions? Because these, I always say, you practice like you play. That's not just true for sports or music, but also with education. If you are going to be taking an exam that is multiple choice, you want to be practicing multiple choice type questions with a lot of your preparation. And the other thing that's important to determine is what is the percent worth of your final exam for your overall grade. Some of them are worth the same as any midterm. Other classes, they're 35% of your grade. But determining just how much of an impact they have on your overall grade is really important to consider as you're moving forward with your planning and prioritization. So I keep saying prioritization, and that is one of the key aspects to everything, whether that's final planning or life for that matter. But the way that I suggest prioritizing your studying is, well, what is your standing in the class? So if you are already getting an A in one class, but struggling in another class, then you probably don't want to prioritize the class that you're already doing well in, because that final is most likely not going to be very difficult for you since you're already doing well in that class and not going to have as much of an impact. And again, how much is that final worth towards your overall grade? So if one is worth 35, 50% of your overall grade, you're going to want to prioritize the studying for those finals more so than one that's maybe worth 5 or 10% of your grade. They're going to have the bigger impact on your overall grade. So considering these two things and weighing out, okay, well, I'm not doing well in this class and this is 35% of my grade, you are definitely going to want to prioritize studying for that final more so than some of the others. So all of these sorts of aspects will help with your planning procedure. So this home stretch schedule, as I have it termed here, is actually given by a professor who is actually the person who started the Cornell note-taking technique, but he's a sort of educational guru. And his suggestion was what he called a home stretch schedule, which is essentially a regular schedule. I always suggest putting it in a digital calendar so that you have it available for yourself on all your devices. And it's just the portion of the semester that you have left. And you want to keep this schedule as detailed as possible. So the first thing that you want to do is put in your calendar the date, time, and location for each of your final exams. Just sort of a pro tip, if you don't go to the right place at the right time, you're not going to do well in that final. So that can be one of the most important things to make sure that you have in your schedule and that you know about. Make sure you also put in any of the homework assignments or projects or lab reports or anything else that you might have due in your classes so that you don't miss those assignments as well. So what students don't really realize is, or not always at least, are like homeworks and quizzes and all of those sorts of things are really buffer points. And especially in your lower level classes, you'll notice that you have a lot of homework assignments and a lot of quizzes. And sometimes I get students asking me why we do this. Part of it is to buffer your grade. So you want to make sure that you get all of those in, because it could be 50% of your grade comes from those sort of buffer type of assignments, which is really helpful. As you move up and start taking higher level classes, sometimes you're only graded on 2 exams, a midterm and a final, and there's no homework, there are no more projects. So you need to utilize like the way that the homeworks and quizzes are sort of given to you in your earlier level undergraduate career classes are to sort of train you. And even if these are not actual assignments that are due, they are necessary for your success in the class. So I'm really saying this for 2 reasons. One, you want to make sure you get as many buffer points as possible to help your grade out. And 2, all of these assignments are really in there to help you prepare for the exams that are typically worth the higher portion of your grade, but they're sort of a necessary evil whether or not they're assigned to you. So utilize these as sort of training for your early level classes, so that when you get to your higher level classes and you no longer have these assignments, you're still ensuring that you do that in order to not get behind on the material. So after you put in the date and time of all your assignments, all of your final exams coming up, make sure you also put in any non-negotiables. Are you working? What is your work schedule? Make sure you put that in. Do you have any family obligations, or are there religious practices that are important to you that you make sure that you are still doing? You want to make sure that all of that is put into your schedule as well. And this home stretch schedule, and part of this extra detail, is putting in when you are going to eat your meals, when are you going to do any workouts, which I recommend that you keep doing because you want to maintain your health as you work through all of this. Are you going to be taking any naps? If so, you might want to put those in too so you don't miss them. Really make sure that you're prioritizing sleep. Sleep is the miracle grow for learning. And if you are not sleeping, you're not at your cognitive best, and you're not going to do as well on your exams, regardless of the amount of studying that you do. In fact, a lot of times I recommend that if you don't know what to prioritize, taking another hour to study things or getting a good night's sleep, get the good night's sleep. There's something called sleep dependent memory consolidation. So your brain actually is really organizing a lot of the material that you're studying while you're sleeping, especially in your deep REM. So if you're not allowing your brain to get to that state, you're really doing yourself a huge disservice, and you're not going to be able to think as well as you would like to. And the more you can prioritize your schedule and the more you stick to your schedule, the more you can ensure that you are getting that 7 to 9 hours of sleep each night. And that will really be a game changer. So really prioritize sleep as much as you possibly can, even during this stressful time. If there are any review sessions or office hours that are being held by your instructor, then I highly recommend that you also make sure that you schedule those in and try to hit those up. And I'll talk about how you can really utilize these sessions to be as productive in them and get the most out of them that you can in just a minute. And from there, once all of that stuff is in there, now block off your study times. And I really recommend that you're pretty flexible with these. So you're not necessarily going to say, I'm going to study my chemistry for this hour, but you're just blocking off final exam studying. And you'll see why I'm saying to just sort of block off the study times without being super specific about what you're going to do in those study times when you're creating your home stretch schedule. So a couple of tips when you're doing this. So what type of person are you? So are you somebody who really works best by interdispersing your work throughout the day and sort of doing things in short bursts while you then go have a meal or then go have a workout? Or are you the type of person who really does better when you have these big blocks of time that are designated for studying? Hopefully all your classes are coming to an end. And so you can make the decision in terms of, well, I work best by breaking everything up throughout the day, or I work best by just getting all of the sort of, like my chores done at one time of the day and then spending the whole rest of the afternoon studying. So as you're putting your study schedule together and thinking about this, and, of course you have non-negotiables that you can't work around, but really considering what type of person you are, how you are the most productive, what time of day you're most productive. Some people are night people, other people are morning people. Like really taking all of this into consideration and individualizing your study schedule for yourself is really important. The more that you sort of know yourself and understand how you work best, the better you can set up your study schedule, and then the better and more productive you're going to be with your time. The one thing that I will say is there is a lot of science to show that the first 2 hours after you wake up in the morning is when your brain is at its best. So whether you wake up at noon or you wake up at 6 a.m., the 2 hours right after you wake up is a high productivity time for your brain. So I recommend trying to do something just when our brain is the most alert. And so you can really get a lot of bang for your buck, so to speak, for that time period. I also recommend you sort of batch together your small tasks. If you have some chores that you need to do, like you have some shopping or this and that. I know people are sort of preparing for the holidays, like getting kind of all of that stuff done in one batch time, and then doing some studying after that can be helpful. But again, if you're somebody who works better interdispersing your work throughout the day, then you might not want to batch together your small tasks and use those small tasks as your little breaks in between your study time. Location matters. The environment that you are studying in is super important. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this at the end of this presentation when I get to the motivational aspect of things, but not sort of like for myself, I like to work in a place that has full of light, and I like to have flowers around me. I don't want to hunker down in a really dark place, like on my floor, and where I'm going to start really feeling sorry for myself with all this work that I have to do. So the more I can create an environment for myself that makes me feel better and happier, the more productive I'm going to be, and the less I sort of hate my life as I'm going through this like arduous time of preparing for finals, which is a lot of work and can be quite stressful. Alarms and reminders can help a lot. So I really recommend that you don't really study for longer than an hour without taking a break. So having an alarm set to make sure that you're not overdoing that, because our brains just sort of, the functioning falls off rather quickly. To make sure that you don't study over that time. More importantly, during the break, making sure that you have an alarm set for 5 or 10 minutes so you don't allow those breaks to stretch on too long. Reminders, all of that can be really helpful. Now it's time to eat. I'm going to go to the gym, whatever it happens to be. They can be really helpful in just making sure that you stay on task. Some people don't find them super helpful because they're really organized and able to stick with their schedule. Other people, like myself, I have a ton of alarms set, and I find them to be really helpful in keeping me on task and keeping my productivity up high and allowing me to still have time for myself, so my mental health is considered and in a good place. So now, why I say that you want to just sort of put together these like final study blocks without really specifying exactly what you're going to do in those blocks of time is because I recommend that you make daily to-do lists. So at the end of the day, take 5 to 10 minutes to write down all of the things that you got accomplished that day and the things that you didn't do that need to be done the following day. So just really kind of organizing everything. And everybody's a little bit different. I like to create what I call a to-do list. So like all of the things I did, I like to write down so I can see, like, look at all the things I did, and it makes me feel good about myself. And I feel more motivated to continue getting everything done. Other people just like to cross off all of the things that they did. And that act of crossing off the things that they did is a motivating factor. But, whatever it is that helps you to feel good about yourself and everything that you did during the day is important to do at the end of the day. And also from there, you can make sure that you have a list of the things that you didn't get done, so you get those done the next day. So at the beginning of each day, you want to do a daily to-do list. Okay, here are the things I didn't get done yesterday. Here are the things that I really would like to get done today, and then prioritize that list. So the prioritization is probably even more important than the actual act of creating the to-do list. So make sure you're getting the things done either that are most important, the hardest exams, all of those sorts of things. The things that you really don't want to do are typically the things that need to be prioritized. So, but make sure that you don't just create that list, but you prioritize it. And taking this time can really reduce your anxiety and increase your productivity. So I have found for myself that I can think about everything all at once and become very overwhelmed with everything that's coming up. So if I take the time to do these to-do lists, I have everything in my brain that I need to do. I've sort of organized it, and my anxiety really lessens. And then it just turns into, now I just need to get it done. So taking the time to make these to-do lists, organizing everything, prioritizing stuff, having a really detailed schedule, setting alarms, all of this will really help you be productive and find balance in this hectic time moving forward. So from here, you start creating your study plan. So the way I suggest that you do this is first in an organizational phase. So take out all of your midterms. And I also suggest that you have your syllabi for each of the classes, your lecture notes for each of the classes, your assignments for each of the classes, and it's all really neatly organized by exam content. And for each of your exams, take a list of what are the concepts that were covered. Your second list will be, here are the questions and the concepts that I got correct. And then a third list will be, here are the questions and concepts that I got wrong. And that will allow you to see where your gaps in your knowledge are and allow you to be very purposeful with your studying. And you can utilize this information with your to-do list. Okay, now I know for the first exam, all of the things that I got wrong were these concepts. So I need to prioritize studying these concepts moving forward through this next week or so before the exams start. So again, really organizing everything in a way that allows you to be very purposeful with the time that you have planned. And this is what I call, or is often called in the educational framework, targeted review. You're going to prioritize the concepts that were covered the most, and you're going to prioritize the concepts that you got wrong. You want to study what you struggled. We all like to study what we know, but you want to make sure that while you're studying, it's difficult. That's how you know that you're doing what you should be doing. If while you're studying, you feel like everything's very easy and you're doing great, you probably are just studying the stuff that you know, which can be, make us feel good, but it's not going to be like helpful on your finals. So make sure you're studying the stuff that you don't know. Make sure you're struggling and there's some sort of confusion in your brain. That confusion that you feel while you're working is learning. So there should be a level of discomfort while you're studying. You don't want to have too much discomfort on the exams. You want to have that discomfort while you're studying. Create a list of questions. So while you're going through the material, if there are specific concepts that you just generally do not understand, create a list of questions that are very targeted on those and reach out for help, whether it's emailing your instructor or hitting up a TA or working with the study group or a tutor that you may have. Like, it can save a lot of time to just directly ask for help on those concepts instead of wasting a bunch of time trying to figure it all out for yourself. You want to create practice exams for yourself. So as many problems, I always recommend taking the problems that you didn't do well on and then starting there with a practice exam for yourself. And then modifying those questions in a way that will force you to think about everything in all directions. And I also recommend that you sort of put yourself in the instructor's place. So think to yourself, if I was an instructor and I was going to write an exam, what types of questions would I write? And start creating some questions for yourself. And if you do work with a group of people, then you can ask everybody to create questions, and then you can share these questions. And really, it's not only helping you answer things in a way that is maybe not the way everything has been asked so far, but it's also forcing you to consolidate and organize the material, because you are now creating questions, which is going to force you to understand the material to create questions on what it is that you're going through in the classes. Create some flashcards, and your lecture notes should be your biggest source of review. So any lecture notes that are posted by the instructor, any notes that you may have taken in class, any mind maps that you might have created from your notes, all of those should really be the first place that you go to. As an instructor and talking to other professors, I can tell you that what we do is look at our lecture notes and write questions based off of them. So that should be the biggest focus and will really allow you to be purposeful with your studies as you move forward. And now you just need to do it. So I tend to call this the robotic mode. You don't want to think too much about what you need to do. You just want to get it done. So again, organize your list at the beginning of the day and then sit down and do it at the times that you have blocked out for yourself. Let your schedule and to-do list guide you. So do not wing it. It's not going to work for you. Make sure that you are sticking to it as much as possible. We're all human, life happens, and we can't always just do exactly what our schedule is exactly as listed. So again, you want to be able to have some flexibility in there, but as long as you're using it to guide you and making sure that the top things that are prioritized on your to-do list are getting done each day, you will be just fine. So that's what I mean by be robotic about it. Again, I feel like the more we think about it, the more we can become overwhelmed on it and the more we can talk ourselves out of doing it. So don't think too much about it, just get it done. Your break will be so much better the harder you work. And then you can feel really good about yourself and move into your break knowing that you did the best that you possibly could. And that's all we can ask from ourselves. And make sure that you're patting yourself on the back. Like I really recommend at the end of the day, congratulating yourself on the things that you did well and got done, and, maybe giving yourself a little pep talk about the things that you wish you had done a little bit better, waking up in the morning and reminding yourself of who you are and what you're capable of doing. But whatever type of like positive affirmations, I highly recommend that you do. I always recommend 80% of the time you should be patting your back and 20% of your time is thinking about the things that you can be doing better. You don't want to live in the spot of what you can be doing better, but you do need to hold yourself accountable. I think many of us are really good at beating ourselves up and not necessarily great at patting ourselves on the back. So be your own cheerleader. Be proud of yourself for the work that you're doing. It will help you get the momentum to move on. So just to sort of summarize, organize your exam material. From there, you want to do targeted review. And then you want to do some consolidation and practice. So consolidate the material. The targeted review again, or what are the things that I'm getting wrong? The consolidation and practice are just making sure that you're able to integrate all the material together, and the practice of exam questions or questions you've created to prove to yourself that you actually know what you know. And then you just kind of want to rinse and repeat. I really recommend that you start off each of your study sessions with a brain dump of everything that you can remember for the class on whatever concepts you might be studying that day, whatever concepts you have been studying. And that will really allow you to see like, okay, here are all the things that I remember. So these are the things that I don't need to spend too much time on. Then go to your notes. What are the things that I didn't remember? What are the concepts that I got wrong that I wrote on my brain dump? And that will allow you to be very targeted with your review. And then you can create some questions, hit up some review sessions, email your friends or your professor, all of that sort of stuff. And then do some practice problems to ensure that and prove to yourself that you know the concepts as you move forward. And keep bringing in the old material, always bringing in the old material and thinking about everything, not just really isolated exam 2. As you're going through exam 2, bring in the exam 1. As you move to exam 3, don't forget to review exams 1 and 2. So keep all the material, especially if it's cumulative, going, which most finals are. So I'm sort of focusing on them being that way. Take advantage of your resources. Go to review sessions, go to office hours, use any supplementary instruction session opportunities if they're available to you, or tutoring opportunities if they're available to you. Many universities have tutoring centers that offer free help. So anything like this that will really allow you to, again, take your questions in and have them answered. Instead, you don't have the time to figure out everything for yourself right now. So make sure that you have targeted questions. You're asking those questions instead of wasting a bunch of time trying to figure it out for yourself. You can save hours of time by shooting off an email or hitting up office hours or a review session and just asking somebody the questions that you have. Interleave your study techniques. So again, I really recommend that you do as much pulling what you know out of your brain as possible. You are test on recalling information. So you want to study in terms of recalling the information that you know. So again, I always recommend your first place every time you sit down to start studying for a class is just active recall. What is a brain dump of everything you can remember from that class? And then you can be very targeted with your review. As many practice problems as you can work through, really important to do that. And I recommend that you only use what you have available for yourself on the final as you work through practice problems. And the other thing to think about is your confidence level. So after you finish a problem on a practice test, how confident are you that you are right or wrong? And maybe even put 1 to 5 on the problem after you've done it before you look at the answer in terms of how confident you are about it. And then when you look at the key, if you're really confident about an answer, but you're wrong, that gives you a lot of information about what you want to target in your next revision. If you're very confident in something and you get it right, well, now you know, okay, I'm not going to spend too much time thinking about this. This is something that I know. I want to study the stuff that I don't know. But if you're getting things right and you're not sure why you're getting them right, then you still want to target that material. So a lot of times it's like, I have a confidence level of 2, and then you get it right. And it's like, okay, I got it right, but I don't necessarily know why I got it right. That is still a concept gap. That is a place that you want to target your studying. So thinking about your confidence level is really important as you work through practice problems and can help you be very purposeful with your study time. Teach the concepts to others. Teaching is a great study technique. Even if you're I was actually talking to one of my learning team members yesterday about this. She has a physics exam and she said she just walks around her dorm room alone, like pretending somebody's there and she's trying to teach the class to them. So even if you don't have anybody else to talk to, you can still try to teach these concepts, which will allow you to find gaps in your understanding. And it can be a really great way, because if you're teaching somebody, you really have to organize and construct your conversation about the material in a way that is understandable. And that's forcing your brain to work in a different way than working through problems is, or doing active recall. So interleaving these study techniques and using a lot of different study techniques is forcing your brain to think about things in a lot of different ways. And that's the best way for our brains to learn. We need to get all of those connections moving. Using flashcards, working with groups, as well as making sure you're doing independent study time and micro studying opportunities. So I recommend flashcards for this. A lot of times you're waiting in line for coffee, or you're waiting for the bus, or your friend's going to meet you for lunch or something like that. That is what I call a micro studying opportunity. You have 3 to 5 minutes to run through some flashcards, or 3 to 5 minutes to look at some practice problems that you've done, or answer some questions that you've created for yourself. One thing that you can do with practice problems is not just sort of the types of problems where you procedurally go through them, but questions like, why are you using, the reason why I'm using this problem or this equation to solve this problem is because. So just thinking about why you use a certain equation at a certain time. Those types of questions are very helpful towards your understanding and recognition of concept gaps. And so these are things that you can just shove in your phone and utilize these tiny pockets throughout the day for micro studying opportunities, which can add up to being about an hour of time. Like, I never recommend sitting down and doing batch work with flashcards and just going through flashcards for an hour or two. First of all, it's just boring. And second of all, our brains don't really work that well. So the more you can sort of use frequency instead of duration for things like flashcards, or answering certain questions about concepts, or like why you're doing certain things, and utilizing these quote unquote micro studying opportunities, really helpful. And again, it doesn't really feel like you did a lot of work, but when you sit back and think about it, you might have spent an hour or two just using these little pockets of time throughout the day to study, and it doesn't feel horrible. So some motivation tips: changing your narrative. So a lot of times it's very easy to get super negative about the amount of work that has to be done, but instead just thinking about how good you're going to feel when you get it done, how nice it's going to feel if you do well on the exam, how great it's going to be when you have your winter break and you know that you did everything that you possibly could. Reminding yourself of why you're in school. These are the goals that I have. This is the life that I want to build. These are the steps that I need to take to earn that life for myself. Changing that narrative can be really helpful when you're just not wanting to do things. Make the studying time more appealing. So go to a coffee shop that you love. Make sure that you're doing it at a time of day that you're most efficient at. Don't sort of hunker down in a dark room on your floor where your back starts hurting. Like, make it a nice experience for yourself. I really like to treat myself. So if I really like certain types of iced coffee drinks, and this time of the year, there's like a lot of yummy sort of coffee drinks that are out there, or Christmas type of food. So only when I'm studying do I allow myself to have these things that I really enjoy. And then it gives me something to look forward to. Like, I really want one of those cranberry bars from Starbucks. So I am only going to have that when I study, and I can't wait to go get some work done so that I can enjoy my whatever it happens to be. Again, just do it. Don't think too hard about it, and really try to use momentum. So that's number 7. The Pomodoro effect is really kind of a way to get your momentum going. And that method is just sitting down for 20 minutes and then taking a break and doing something else for 20 minutes and taking a break. But a lot of times, what I like to do in this method, or this momentum idea, is, okay, I don't want to do anything at all. I'm going to take 10 minutes to roll through some flashcards, or I'm going to take 10 minutes to go through my lecture notes or do a couple practice problems. And once I get started, it's like, okay, well, I already did 10 minutes, so I'll do a little bit more. And before I know it, I've built up the momentum to be really productive with whatever time I have available to myself. Parkinson's law is saying that the amount of time you allot for yourself to do something is the amount of time it will take you to do it. So if you say, I have an hour to go through this material, then it'll take you an hour to get through that material. But if you say, oh, I'm just going to go to the library and I'll just hang out and, it'll be fine, then it'll take you 6 hours to get through the same amount of material that you could get done in an hour. So that's another reason why you have these really blocked out study times. Create your to-do lists, and then every day decide what you're going to do during those study times, and then utilize Parkinson's law, because you'll get done what you say you're going to get done in the time that you've allotted for yourself. So making that schedule and sticking to it, utilizing Parkinson's law, momentum, the Pomodoro method, all of that can be very helpful. And create a routine for yourself. I know that it's not a lot of time left, but getting into sleeping habits and making sure that you're taking some time for yourself, and maybe setting up your schedule so it's fairly consistent each day, can be really helpful to just being as productive as possible. Don't study more than an hour without taking a short break. And if you are ever feeling really overwhelmed, that's a good time for some mental health break. I always recommend taking a walk, getting some sun. Don't use any earbuds, just take a 10-minute walk, spend some time breathing for yourself, take a shower or a bath, like just these little things, and getting out in nature and just allowing yourself to take a breath can be really helpful, and allow you to move into the next study block and get everything done that you want to that day. Get some sleep, be consistent, try to have as much of a routine as possible. Make your to-do list, prioritize those to-do lists, interleave your studying methods, and stress management. These can be game changers moving forward, and making sure that you get everything done and aren't, just kind of a mess moving forward. I hope this was helpful, and I hope it allows you to kind of have a little bit more focus moving forward, and allow you to be more prioritized and efficient with your time, and of course, kill your finals. If there's more information that you're interested in terms of actual targeted studying techniques and more sort of strategies towards learning and things that you can build into your schedule, there will be a learning workshop in January that you're welcome to register and learn more about on this link. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. Otherwise, I'm going to let you start organizing and prioritizing so that you can annihilate and dominate all of your final exams and have a wonderful break. So thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate your time. And again, if you have any questions, you can throw them in the chat or ask me. Otherwise, Dr. Lori will be sending out a link from this video, as well as a PDF of the slides.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.